So what exactly is happening with Biomutant? You know, that really ambitious RPG that was supposed to release a while ago, but not only did it never release, it also got a ton of delays, and then there was also a very long period of silence when we didn't know what the heck was even going on. Like, is this game still in development? Is Experiment 101 still working on it? And well, the answer is a surprising yes, and not just that, it's also in its final stages of development according to the creative director over at Experiment 101. We also have some brand new 10 minutes of gameplay footage that I want to share with you guys, so a ton of new info and exciting stuff ahead. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on it. Also subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all of these awesome games, and let's jump right into it. Anyway, the reason for why the game has been delayed so many times and there's still quite a bit of silence surrounding it is, well, basically the team size. It's only 18 people that work on this game. Of course, the creative director has confirmed that it already reached its end phase of development, so it should in theory be done really soon, but what's ahead is even more important, which is of course squishing bugs, making sure that the game is properly working, and they're also trying to make sure that the game is streamlined enough so that the players know what to do, according to the interview with IGN. So it's very likely that this isn't going to be a 2020 release as much as I wanted it to be. It's very likely that it's going to be 2021, and even in that case it might still be like the middle of 2021. Again, a really ambitious game with a very small but dedicated team, which is why it's gonna take a while until we get to see this game on our systems. But in the meantime, I want to discuss about one of the first topics that have been covered in the interview, and that is the character creation. And I was surprised by just how many elements and systems make up the character creation. You can influence a ton of stuff, from the appearance to the stats all the way to the classes, and yes, there have been a number of classes that have been confirmed for this game. So basically, when you're starting up, you're going to be able to create your own character. There's going to be 6 different tribes you can pick from, each represented by a different DNA string. So you're basically choosing a DNA string, and from there on you're going to be able to mutate and morph it to your own version of the character that you want to have. The version that we saw in the trailers was the one that the developers came up with, for example. It's kind of like their poster boy, but yours of course can look vastly different and also have different kinds of stats and different kinds of powers. Which brings me to the topic of appearance and the fact that it affects your stats. So when you choose the stats over there, you're going to see that your character physically morphs. You can go in and make a character that's really smart, and this might be reflected in its looks, and if he's smart, he's also going to be able to use kind of like psychic powers and have bigger intelligence and be kind of like a mage, so to speak. But otherwise, you can also create a character that's really powerful and has a ton of strength, but he isn't going to be as smart, since those are opposite kind of traits. Later on, it's been confirmed that you can also invest further points into all of these traits, and even invest points into traits that were kind of neglected in the character appearance screen. So it's all again depending on what you want to create. There's a ton of liberty when it comes to customizing and creating the best version of your own character. Once you have finished with the character appearance and like chose the colors and whatnot, you're then going to be presented with the classes, and it's been confirmed that there are several classes that you can choose from in the character creation screen that will influence both your starting weapons as well as your starting gear, among many other things later on in the game. Some of these have already been talked about, like for example, you can create a character that's more like a magic type. You can go with more intelligence and be kind of like this psychic that uses psychic powers. I think that at one point in the gameplay trailer we saw one of these characters being able to levitate for way longer in the air than any other type of combat we've seen up until now. So it's very likely that this is one of those abilities, but there's others, like you can go in full commando and just be kind of like a Rambo character that uses guns and whatnot and have a ton of points invested into that, as well as strength, or maybe into melee damage. If you want to be a more nimble type of character that has a ton of agility, that's also the option, since there's a ton of gear and equipment that you can get in this game. Now, on the subject of loot, looting is going to be very important for this game, and you're going to get items from a number of sources, including defeating enemies as well as scavenging. And there's going to be a very expensive crafting system to accompany this that will give you the chance to combine parts and create a ton of very unique weapons. There's thousands, if not millions, of combinations that you can do, both for those like melee weapons like swords and hammers and whatnot, as well as for guns such as rifles and pistols and shotguns. You can find parts, for example, that might give you special abilities, like the ability to shoot a additional bullets or turning your ammo into fire bullets, as well as a ton of other options in there as well. The same goes with the gear system. You can go in and wear different types of armors on your character. You can even craft your own chest pieces, your shoulders, and even like helmets and whatnot, and these are going to be useful more than just for the access to additional stats that they give you, but also for the fact that they provide additional survivability against certain types of environment conditions. Like for example, if you're heading in a cold zone, you might want to craft and wear a jacket so that you don't freeze out, and likewise in these dead zones that seem to be affected by all kinds of pollution, you might want to craft and wear an oxygen mask that will save you from all the trouble and even dying. So quite a lot of systems that make even the environment seem to be very interesting. But of course it wouldn't be a full-blown RPG if it also didn't feature a rarity system. And yes, all of, or well, most of the gear that you can loot in this game has a rarity on it, from uncommon to common all the way up to rare, and we even saw one of these items, this gun, that was featured as a ultimate type of weapon, which begs the question, is there another tier on top, or is this the maximum? Like, it would be really awesome to see something of a legendary quality that had some really awesome stats and also some really awesome effects and 3D graphics. On a final note, on the weapon and gear side, the only thing that I want to mention more is the fact that armor presets have also been confirmed. So when you create your gear and equip it, you can create sets for it and save it as a preset, and then kind of switch between these on the fly so that you can better adapt to different types of combat situations or maybe to different types of environments. But yeah, this sounds really awesome. I wish that more games did this, and I'm glad that the abundance of gear in this game is going to not be that much of a hindrance when it comes to switching out all of these items. This brings us to the final topic that was discussed in the interview, and that is the boss fight. You're obviously going to be able to fight a ton of bosses in the game, but apparently according to the creative director, the biggest and the meanest are these world eaters. And this makes sense both from a gameplay point of view as well as from a story point of view. So basically the map is broken down into several routes, and at the end of these routes you're going to be able to find these world eaters. Apparently the world also becomes more wild as you lead into these routes. The basic premise of the story also helps up with the gameplay, so you're basically in this really beautiful world, but unfortunately this world is about to end, and you kind of have two options. You can either go in and choose to save it. It's kind of like a branching narrative, I think, that you can go in and have decisions that will impact the world and outcome towards the end of the game, but otherwise you can also choose to end this world that you're in. And then naturally the question that I have is, what exactly happens post the main story with the game if you already chose to end the world and whatnot? Like, are you going to be able to still continue playing after finishing the main story, or does it just end? I would assume that it's not just going to end, and there is going to be something that will let us continue play, like in other games that have done this in the past. But it does sound really awesome. It does sound like your past decisions are going to influence what happens after you defeat these world eaters. And there's several of these world eaters, as I've said. There's multiple, not just like 4 or 5. From the footage we had in the past, I've seen at least 10 of these world eaters, or at the very least, at least 10 big bosses that you can fight with. Now against these bosses, you sometimes might be fighting on foot using your character and your abilities, but sometimes you might be using these vehicles. We've seen a number of vehicles and means of transportation in the game, like for example this one underwater, that you fight this big world eater and you're going to be able to use this vehicle even to latch onto its forehead and kind of deal damage onto its face, which sounds really awesome, but there's a ton more. Even one of these mechs is used into a later section of the game to go in and take down one of these enemy bosses. Again, it begs the question, can we exit these vehicles and fight the bosses on our own, or are we stuck into fighting with the vehicles so that we can better take them down? My assumption is that we can use a combination of these and kinda use them freely at any given time, but obviously it might be easier using just the regular old vehicles. And there's also mounts, by the way, if you had any doubts. It's already been shown in the past that there's quite a number of mounts that we can use in the game, but not much discussion has been done over this. Nonetheless, for now the game looks quite exciting, also very ambitious, which is why we didn't receive a release date. And even like one of the end screens for the recent trailer is coming when they feel satisfied by it. And currently it's going into its QA testing, there's a ton of bug fixes and streamlining of the game that's going to follow suit, and hopefully by the end of this year we might get something like a beta or something that we might get to test, leading into an actual release into 2021. Just stating my bet, I think that this is going to be a 2021 release, maybe even a PS5 release, since it would make total sense for that to happen. Anyway, this is it for now with Biomutant. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, as always, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.